2nd. As we open the meeting, we have a quorum, so I call our meeting to order at 7 o'clock. And I'd like to remind you that in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over Lunenburg Public Access. And rebroadcasts of this meeting will be available on Channel 8, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m., Friday at 6 p.m., Saturday and Sunday at 7 p.m. And rebroadcasts are also available on YouTube. So the first item on the agenda is public comment. And I understand we have a number of folks that would like to make some budget requests. So let's start with Jack.
Good evening, thanks. Nice to see you all again. You can see I'm in some pretty good company right here. So I'm just peripheral in this initially, but we follow these, the three of us follow these meetings quite closely, and we understand that there may be at least a slight opportunity for additional allocation or redistribution for some funds, and if that's the case, we'd respectfully like to make not a presentation, but just again a respectful suggestion as to where that might go, and so right away I think it's important to note that, and I'm very proud and flattered to work with both the chiefs, even though, again, I'm only peripheral and in the vehicle maintenance, but we kind of put our money where our mouth is here. We often talk about the spirit of cooperation, and this is what we carry on together. So what you're seeing tonight is not anything of a surprise to us, and it's something that we do continually, and I, for one, am very proud of it. So I'm going to turn it over to the fire chief first, because there's no better description of his needs than himself, and then he'll turn it over to Chief Marino, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Jack. Like Director Roddiquant said, obviously there's money available. We felt any one of us could use that entire amount and it wouldn't solve all of our problems. We talked, we kind of looked what we could do together, what could we come forward with for the most critical of our critical needs. For myself, part of this money, look at covering the shifts that we have the most trouble covering on our off hours right now. And my proposal would be for $48,000 to allow us to staff the station with 2 EMTs Saturday and Sunday for 12-hour days. Those are the shifts, as you've seen in the budget presentation that I presented to you, that these are some of the times that we have the hardest time having people available to cover right now. Right now, weeknights, we do okay on. Of anything from my coverage to increase our response times for the ambulance or for the first engine, this is where, for the least amount of money, it can make the biggest amount of difference for us. That would provide us 12-hour coverage, 7 days a week. We would still be on call at night. So again, it's not a perfect solution, but it would give us a fair amount more coverage than we currently have now. Currently, we cover 36 hours a week, or 36%, I'm sorry, of the hours in the week with coverage in the station. This would put us at 50%. And this proposal, again, would be using my existing call force. This wouldn't be hiring any personnel. This would just be utilizing my current personnel on a part-time basis to, again, increase our response time and be able to provide a better service to the town. And that's the primary part of my end of this. So, yeah, I said 48,000.
48,000, right.
48,000 would provide that coverage.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Whether the 48,000, is that just for Saturdays and Sundays? Does that take into account holidays, or is holidays already covered?
We cover a few holidays right now. We used to be able to cover more. As time has gone on, cost has gone up, the budget hasn't kept up, we can cover fewer and fewer. So there would be a little bit of overlap, and we could utilize that to cover probably more of the holiday, like the holiday nights, when again, the days of a lot of people being in town on a holiday are kind of gone. More and more people are away or traveling. The holidays make it tougher. So we might be able to cover more time on the holidays than we currently cover now.
Thank you.
How many hours is that, Saturday and Sunday?
Saturday and Sunday, it would be 2 people, 12 hours a day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. both days.
Day shift.
Primarily it'd be 2 firefighter EMTs, so you could cover either the ambulance or the first fire engine out the door.
And that would bring us to a 50% coverage.
Right. It's a bigger Band-Aid on the situation, but it gives us better coverage than we have right now for a pretty good return on investment, I would think, for the amount of money, to be able
Right.
to increase that to at least 50% coverage.
Any other questions for Chief Sullivan? Okay.
Jim?
Again, just to, I think, reiterate what was already said, I'm just here to attempt to fill some of the gaps in my FY16 budget, more so on a priority basis. Primarily, what I'm looking for is to cover the desk. Last year, we made an attempt to cover the desk from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In December, we had to cut that back to 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday. Ideally, what we thought about doing this in the next fiscal year is to try to cover the desk 12 hours a day for 7 days a week. We asked for $96,000, as you can see in the FY16 budget, because we thought, at the very least, we should try to bring back that 12 hours a day, at least 5 days a week. Ideally, for about $45,000 in my budget, in addition to the $70,000 that was already allocated, we could probably do that. At the very least, I'd like to at least bring back the $26,000 gap to cover Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. There was an issue with the Narcan, which I think I can explain. I believe Karen had some questions about that last time. What we've done to cover that, we tried to take care of that issue this year. We've done some research. We were able to get 2 people trained as trainers already. We plan on doing the training in a couple of weeks. We asked this year for $1,823 to buy the Narcan, but through our research, we learned that because it only lasts for a year, it has a shelf life, and because it has to be taken in and out of the building on every shift, it can't withstand cold or hot. We decided that the best way to handle that is to put the Narcan in with the IEDs, because they have to take those in and out of the station every shift. So now we're only issuing out a couple of vials of Narcan, so it's the price is negligible. So we do not need that money this year. What we really need into next year would be another IED, because we only have 2, and we really should have 3 out on the street at all times in order to accomplish this, across the board. So we're looking for that $26,000 gap to be closed. Preferably $45,000 that would cover us for 7 days a week. And as Jack said, and I believe he'll speak to this, we have a shortfall in our vehicle maintenance account.
Chief, just to be clear, 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. would be $45,000,
Approximately $45,000.
and 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday would be $26,000. Is that right?
Right, for a total of 96, right. $26,000 is the gap.
No, actually, I think the question goes more to, will 45,000 cover the weekend and during the week?
I believe it will. The
Okay.
figure we came up with to cover that would be $119,000 total, so we have 70 now. I think that's a little aggressive, quite honestly. I think we can do it for about $45,000 more than what we've already that we've already been allocated.
Right, but in the initial budget, it was allocated at, or the target was originally 96,000, which is the 26,000 you're looking to put back.
Right, right, exactly, and that would hopefully cover the Monday through Friday, 7A to 7P, 12 hours a day.
Right, okay. And you're saying that the Narcan will be covered in a different way. What about the cost of an IED? Is that something that,
It's approximately $2,000?
Neighborhood $2,000.
$2,000 to cover one more IED. That's something I'm really looking to purchase within next year. I should have another one out there just to make sure we're covered.
okay, thank you.
I'm going to move on to, something that concerns all of us, but really, even, I've heard this before in 2 meetings, but, folks, kind of money, if there is money available, I mean, where should we look further than to enhance the protection of our community? And here, if you have that opportunity, even if it's a one-time opportunity here, it may behoove us to look at that very seriously. The other numbers, or the other problem, if you will, that we'd like to speak to is vehicle maintenance. It seems, at least for 2, through the town manager's research, for 2 out of the last 4 years, we have just not been able to cover it. It's either covered from other parts of the budget or covered from other departments within the vehicle maintenance. Now, years ago, this was divided. It used to be all one account, as you may remember. It was divided into police, fire, DPW at that time for accountability, but also so that we could track what each department's needs are. And we're finding that each year, are we making the budget? Yeah, sometimes we are, but oftentimes this is because, and most times, this is because, and I'll speak to the DPW, is because we defer maintenance on vehicles until the first of the year. This is what you don't see. Yes, if we have X amount of dollars and at the end of the year we've covered it, it may look like, well, you covered it, everything is good. Well, everything is not good, because inevitably with my department, I can tell you definitively, there are a number of vehicles, a number of problems that wait until the first of the fiscal year, for repairs, and that puts that vehicle on the shelf until we get to July 1st. I don't know that that's common knowledge, and when you look at the budget numbers, you don't see that. And again, I'm going to, ask both the chiefs to give a better description on how the vehicle maintenance number affects them. You'll see in our above target number that we looked for an additional $18,000 in vehicle maintenance, and that's what we'd like to propose or for your consideration this evening. So again, the fire chief will give you an idea where his fleet sits in terms of maintenance.
Thank you, Jack. During my budget presentation, obviously, I've spoke about, the vehicle replacement plan. You're well aware of my vehicle maintenance issues. As Jack talked about with repairs being deferred, like in this case this year, the expenses I had to expend on engine 4 right at the beginning of the fiscal year in July, those were they were put off from the year before. And that we just didn't have the money to do it in the previous fiscal year. The truck was still operational, so we took care of it as soon as we could. But again, it kicks that can down the road. As like right now, as you're well aware, vehicle maintenance has been a tough year for us. I've got probably another $5,000 in repairs that I'm putting off, that I can put off right now until July 1. But again, it's pushing the can down the road a little bit. They're non-emergency items so far. If something fails on it, they may become an emergency item and I have to fix it. But right now I can get away with the vehicles are operational, they're not a safety issue. I can make do with it, but again, it snowballs as it continues along. The other challenge, again, as we've talked about with vehicle replacement, especially if we begin moving vehicles beyond where we've talked about in the replacement cycle. As they get older, they require more maintenance, just like all of us do. And this is an ongoing issue. As I say, a couple of the vehicles were older vehicles that needed repairs that you don't normally see, but there's stuff that happens when the trucks get 20, 25 years old. So that's sort of where my issue has been. I think my comment was, I can't always foresee what the repair is going to be, but every year it seems like I come up with a repair that is several $1,000s that we're not anticipating because of some of the age of the fleet. So, and Chief Marino, if you've got anything to add on your end, unless anybody has any questions.
I have a question, but I'll hold it until after we hear from Chief Marino.
Primarily, we're in this, we're in the same situation. We're running cars a little bit longer now. We're keeping a little bit longer. We do about 48 to 50,000 miles a year on each car. We spend a lot of money on tires. For an example, tires, at one point, we were buying them on a government subsidy. Matter of fact, we still are, but they were $40 a piece, and now they're $140 a piece. So you can, and this is over a period of about 15 years, so you can imagine, we've had to keep up with that. Oil, parts, everything goes up. So if we don't increase vehicle maintenance, we can't keep up. We're in a bind right now. If we ever lost an engine, that'd be a $4,000 to $6,000 bill. We haven't had that problem, but if we do tomorrow, we're not going to be able to pay for it because we're just not prepared for that. What we do to try to eliminate those problems is we do regular maintenance. We change the transmission oil and engine oils regularly to try to avoid that from happening. But the fear is if it does, we're not going to be able to pay for those repairs. The $500 deductibles come out of vehicle maintenance for accidents. We've had 3 of those this year, 2 during the snow and one before that. So there's $1,500 out of that. We've had to adapt to the new model years. We've gone from using Crown Vics for years. They discontinued them. Now we're using SUVs. So we've had to adapt to that, and that's cost us money in terms of buying a different style of rim for the car so that we can put snow tires on them, and they require 4 snow tires. So that got to be expensive. So we're just trying to adapt to all these changes and all the increases in the price of parts. Hopefully in the next couple of years, if I replace some of the cruisers, sometimes we get a little bit of a break because, for the first 36,000 miles, there's some warranty work that can be taken care of elsewhere. But primarily, we're going through brakes, tires, shocks, and so on and so forth, and a lot of oil. We're doing oil changes about every 2 weeks because we put about 3,000 miles on every 2 weeks. Wow.
So I know we have kind of placeholders for the reserve account this year for vehicle maintenance, both on the police and fire. I guess my question would be, how much of this year's increased expense would be considered extraordinary and one time, and how much might be a recurring expense? I know you've put in for an above-target request of $18,000. If we weren't able to fully fund the 18, is there some other lesser number that that you can justify?
I mean, any amount seems to be able to help. I based my number on what I've seen for repairs that I didn't expect. The repairs, example, engine 4, we weren't anticipating having to replace a radiator, but the truck is 20 years old. We didn't expect to have to put springs in the front of the ladder truck because one of them broke from, who knows what. Truck's 26 years old. And like I said before, I can't always anticipate what it's going to be, but my best guess has been I've been looking at least around the neighborhood of a $5,000 repair beyond what I'm normally expecting every year. Hence, that's where I came up with that number from, to at least try to offset some of that. I certainly didn't expect to have to put quite a bit of money into, the ambulance.
Right.
But that particular motor is known to have those issues. Hopefully that has solved that problem for a while.
Right.
And again, with a new engine coming in, I assume we'll have less maintenance costs on that for a while because it's new. Same with the new ambulance. Again, as you replace vehicles, the maintenance costs go down for a short period of time. But that's sort of what I based my number on, was that seems to be the unusual, unexpected repair that pops up every year.
Right.
So.
And Chief Marino, if I'm not mistaken, your $13,000 includes some amount of fuel as well as maintenance, actual maintenance. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And what's driving the additional fuel expense? I mean, gas prices are as low as they've been in a long time.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on that, and one of the things I can tell you that came up is for, let's see, 6, 12, 18 months, we had a car going back and forth to Worcester to the police academy. So that accounted in the last 18 months for an increase in fuel. The reason for that is if we had to pay, we have to provide them with a car for driver training. We thought if we paid them by the mile, which we're required to do by contract, when we crunched those numbers, it looked like it was going to cost us about $2,000 per person for the 6-month period that they go to the academy. So it would have been about a $6,000 bill, a lot more than it would have cost us for fuel. So we let them take the car back and forth. They would have needed it anyway.
Right.
And it was a lot cheaper to do it that way. So 18 months of that's the gas, we were using more gas than we had anticipated. That was one of the things that we found pushed that up.
Right.
Of course, our calls for service have increased every year dramatically, so we thought, well, there's two schools of thought. I mean, are we patrolling less and going to calls more? Which, in other words, if there's no calls, you're going to be driving around more, doing the security thing.
Right.
It seems like we're going from call to call to call now, so, I don't know how to reconcile that piece of it yet. I honestly don't. I don't know why we would be using more gas. We look at it from two different angles. Higher call rate, but is it that we're using less gas or more? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I just know that was one piece of it I could figure out is the Academy car piece of it. And it definitely is cheaper to do that than it is to pay them the 52 cents or 51 cents a mile fee.
Okay. Other questions on the vehicle maintenance?
No.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the public safety arena? Any comments from the public or questions from the public on the public safety request? Okay, I believe we have representatives from the library.
We'll go to the public mind. Oops. Good evening. Dick Mayu, Assistant Chair of the Library Trustees, and my support staff back here, Robin Venezia, one of the trustees, Lars Woodstrand, and Bob Ebersol, who's our liaison. And we had a special meeting last night over the budget, and as a result of that, you received an email today. And earlier this year, the trustees of the Lunenburg Public Library came before the Finance Committee with concerns about energy costs for the current fiscal year, and we were able to work out a solution. We now find ourselves before you again, this time regarding the budget allocation for the coming fiscal year. Bob Kraft's head cold there. As we are aware, the spike in energy costs has sent all of our budgets into deficit. Lunenburg Public Library is no exception. As part of the response, we are working with the Green Communities Committee to save energy by retrofitting inside and outside lighting with energy-saving LEDs. Although this may help in the long run, we need your assistance now. We come before you asking for an increase in our appropriation for FY16 of $14,250.60. This represents a 4% increase over the town manager's recommended total LPL budget for FY16, and we'll go into 3 lines: the electricity charges, heating charges / natural gas, and library materials. The additional funds will only bring us back to a budget that allows us to continue with our current level of service to the citizens of Lunenburg. Since our budget is so small to start with, around 1% of the total Lunenburg budget, and since most of it is taken up with salaries and state-mandated spending on materials, the budget just cannot absorb the increased utility costs and continue to offer the services that the community expects to receive. So, The trustees are asking you to add this amount to the LPL budget that will be presented at town meeting and allow the Lunenburg Public Library to continue to provide the outstanding service that the citizens of Lunenburg have come to expect. Open for questions.
Yeah. The total amount is $14,250.60, which is a little bit different from, if I look at the budget as submitted, it's a little bit different from the above-target requests that were in the original budget. It's actually a little bit less. I was hoping you could break it out into the components, the three components. That would be helpful.
Okay, the way, and Mr. Henshaw was there last night as well, so if I err, John, jump in. The way that I believe this came to was we added back in the $7,500 difference in the electricity charge line. We added back in the $4,781 to the heating charges and natural gas line. We did not add in the total back that had been changed on the library material line. So what we did was, because the library materials must be 16%, what we did was the increase, which is the 75 and the 47, took the 16% of that and added that in to come up with that $14,000 number.
Okay, so the original library material amount was $5,132.
Right.
It's now something less than that.
Right. And we didn't add all of that back in. All that we did was figure what additional monies we would need based on the fact that the budget was going to go up by the little over $13,000 just to meet energy costs.
Right.
And again, the thing is that this is just to keep us right where we are.
Okay. As I look at the original target budget that had the $10,000 additional for the electricity and the $24.98 additional for the natural gas charges, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I thought the town manager's recommended budget still came in at the 30 and 17, no? Am I reading that wrong? I'm reading on the above target figure, the 10,000 and the 2498, were they excluded from your recommended budget? Because I'm seeing them in your recommended budget, but I might be looking at an earlier version.
The recommended budget for electricity, or for that line, is $30,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, so the above target, so they were requesting 40,000, so when I'm looking at the above target, I should be reading it right to left.
Yeah, and I think the numbers
Okay.
are a little different because there was some additional work done on utilities after the budget was submitted, and I think even the original submission of 40,000 for electricity is a little bit low. And I think that's part of the difference as well.
Right. And the natural gas, are we confident we have a good number there? We went from $6,000 in fiscal 15 to $14,719 in the target budget, which is a bit less than the, I'm sorry, town manager's budget, which is less than the target.
Okay, and then just for a question that comes from absolutely nowhere, is it possible, instead of increasing the budget line, to do an offset using net metering credits? Or is that illegal? Because I know there was some concern about raising the line just in terms of the, raising the base.
Yeah, so we don't actually receive any net metering credits. We call them net metering credits, but we don't receive credits, we receive cash.
Okay, so it
But
can be...
we've continually referred to them as that. And no, there isn't a way for us to do a direct offset. I think I'm supportive of their request for additional funding. They absolutely need the additional funding to fund the utilities. The only other option for them would be to cut back in services, which would be a cut in hours. So I'm supportive of that. If we were to include that money in the budget, I just did a rough calculation. I think when we go to look at the fiscal 17 budget, we're going to end up about 4,000 higher because of this. So if you are supportive of this, I would prefer to see a separate line in public buildings that has, excess utility costs for libraries or something like that. And we did talk about that a little bit at the meeting last night too, and I think the trustees are supportive of that because we don't want to necessarily just artificially increase what our required spending is for the library.
Right, so we want to make sure that we meet the minimum spending requirement, but essentially no more, and put a line elsewhere in the budget to account for the difference.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, it would still be appropriated for that purpose. Yeah? Any other questions for Dick? Any other questions from the public on the library's request? Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Do we have any other public comment at this time? Okay. I'm going to come back to the budget questions in just a minute. I'm going to move to the next item on our agenda, which is communications from the committee. I have a letter from Elaine Peterson, Executive Assistant to Town Manager, reappointment requests. So we have a new reappointment process with the Board of Selectmen, and we have two requests for reappointment forms here, as we have two members of the committee whose terms are expiring at the end of the fiscal year, Terry and myself. So the Board of Selectmen will be reviewing and reappointing in June, and any member seeking reappointment should fill out the form, and any member not seeking reappointment should send notice of such. And these forms need to be returned by May 1st. Terry, I won't put you on the spot, but I understand from our conversation that you are planning to reapply?
Yeah, I am planning to reapply.
As am I. Okay.
Thank you.
I have a letter here from Dr. Sheila Harity, Superintendent of Montechusett Regional Vocational Monitech. And this is our official, I guess it's an invoice, but it's confirmation of the regional school district assessment in the amount of $801,484. And without checking my notes, I assume that's consistent with the number that they presented to us. And Carrie, this is just copied to me, right? This is into your office for disposition?
I have.
You have it. Okay. And a portion of this increase is due to an increase in enrollment. What was the increase in enrollment, do you recall? Is it 7? 7. Okay. Any other communications from the committee?
No.
Okay. So, Carrie, I'd like to ask for your recommendation with respect to the departments we just heard from. We heard a request from Chief Sullivan for if we were to have 12-hour coverage on Saturday and Sunday, we would increase our total coverage from 36% to 50% at a cost of $48,000. Perhaps we would start with that one.
Okay. Wasn't necessarily expecting to get asked for my opinion on these. That, I think I've been very vocal at every presentation that I think the number one priority for the town is to increase ambulance service. We have an awful lot of needs, and it's difficult to say one is more important than the other, but I think we have a pretty big hole with not having any coverage, any regular coverage for ambulance on the weekends. I wasn't at the presentation the evening that both of the chiefs made to you. I was at another meeting, but I did review the presentations, and I think the graph where all of the calls for service are plotted against the days of the week, you can clearly see from that, if you recall that picture, that between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., regardless of the day of the week, the calls for service spike. I think we have an opportunity with this new growth to fill that hole. And I think to be able to fund coverage 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday would be a great service to the community. So that would be something I would strongly support.
Just a comment. I know we've had some discussion the last couple of weeks about being more proactive in terms of setting priorities for the town. I can't think of a priority higher than saving lives. You know, we all have a lot of demands on the town, a lot of things that we'd like to do. But I can't help but think if we have an opportunity to increase our response times for a bigger window, maybe we can't get to 100% just yet, but if we can increase from 36% to 50% coverage, I'm in favor of that.
I definitely support it.
Okay, we also have a request to increase the desk watch. Right now, we're covered from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday. I guess we have two levels of service here. One would be 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at a cost of $45,000, or Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at a cost of $26,000. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the 26 that was in the original budget recommendation. Any comments?
So this item is also very important. When we went to regional dispatch, one of the trade-offs we made was not having personnel in the public safety building 24/7. And I think the move to go to regional dispatch has been great. I think it will pay off even more in the future as we have other communities join and we'll see our assessment come down. But it definitely left a hole in the public safety building. We do have, as you know, have been able to fill that hole somewhat with one person who is a uniformed police officer, so who is able to do anything that any other police officer could do. That person is very helpful in taking counter people coming in for permits, requesting paperwork. The other benefit, though, is that person, being a uniformed police officer, also can monitor lockup. We always go over in our lockup budget every year by a sizable amount in comparison with the total budget. So we're easily exceeding what we budget by 20, 25, sometimes even more %. So whatever additional money we can put into the desk officer position that doubles as lockup, it's beneficial, because then if we have somebody that we have to monitor, we're not calling somebody back at an overtime rate, we're paying a regular time rate. Whether it is the additional $26,000 or the additional $45,000, I think that depends on what some of the other priorities are. The committee really hasn't had a chance to discuss that, but I think it's important to put something.
Great. Any comments? Okay. Vehicle maintenance, I know there was some measure of increase in the vehicle maintenance budget built into the preliminary recommendation.
Overall, there's a $10,000 increase in the budget. We definitely have need for more funding if more funding is available. Not to be repetitive, I was kind of scribbling while the chiefs were presenting, but in the police department, we're maintaining 2 types of cruisers right now. So we have an added expense because we need to have parts and supplies for 2 different models of cruisers, and that will continue for a period of years while we phase out the Crown Victoria. The fire chief may have mentioned, you're all very aware that in the next several years we have 3 fire trucks that are on the capital plan for replacement, and I'm assuming everybody is aware that it is not feasible to replace those, so we're going to have to keep those pieces of equipment in service longer, so we'll have a higher maintenance cost with keeping those in service. So I think it's important, if the funds are available, to set something aside for the vehicle maintenance budget.
Okay. And you've already commented on the library. Okay, so I'm going to move on, and then we'll come back to the budget article. But Kerry suggested that we first talk about the fiscal 15 budget amendment article and the capital article before we finalize the budget.
So one note that I would like you to make, there is $129,578 proposed as surplus. If you were to recommend appropriating that to departments, we have to take into account that we need to increase the deposit to the stabilization fund. So we would need to increase, if we were to appropriate the full amount, or recommend appropriating the full amount, you need to keep aside $6,478. So you really have $123,100 to work with. So I think first we could take up the fiscal 2015 budget adjustment article. I'm not asking you to vote on this tonight. This is one that you typically will hold to maybe your last meeting before town meeting, because we would like that time to work with the budget to see if we can do better than what's being proposed tonight. You should have a handout with very small print, draft fiscal 15 budget adjustments. So what we've done, the town accountant and I we've taken our first stab at where we see surpluses and deficits to give you an idea of what we're seeing for closeout for fiscal 15. In general government, we are looking at a surplus of $105,765. 50 of that is your reserve fund that we would propose. You're very limited in what you can approve from the reserve fund, extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures, but if we have town meeting reappropriate it, it can be used for broader categories. So that's 50. That's almost half of what we're proposing there. There's $9,000 left in the selectmen's budget. There was an additional half-time position that was funded in the selectmen's budget that was not filled and will not be filled. It's not proposed to be filled in fiscal 16. The other large items are in the treasurer and tax collector's office. We went through a period of time where we did not have a treasurer tax collector. I was serving in that position while we were in the process of hiring another person. We hired somebody in-house. We hired the assistant treasurer. And we have not yet filled the assistant treasurer's position. That position is advertised. We would be in a position to fill that position before the end of the fiscal year, but we could also leave it open and fill it as of July 1st if we needed to. What I've proposed is that we would fill it about June 1st. So the additional funds are between the salary that wasn't used by the treasurer collector for a period of time and isn't now being used by the assistant treasurer. In legal fees, I'm projecting a surplus of $12,500, and that's based on just our usage of town council this year. And then $10,955 in the planning department. We were without a land use director for about 3 months. So that's where that surplus comes from. In public buildings, I'm projecting a surplus of $11,620. This is probably going to end up a little bit less than that, but that is a combination of utilities and maintenance for buildings. In central purchasing, about $4,000. Then in public safety, in total, this is police, fire, our radio watch, our dispatch, the inspectors. I'm projecting a deficit of $63,000. 20 of that in lockup, 28,000 of that in overtime for the fire department. And then another large item is for our electrical inspector, the wiring inspector. The way we pay our inspectors is they get a percentage of the fee. So we put the anticipated revenue in the budget, and we put an anticipated expense in the budget. When we have more permits, obviously the inspector gets paid more because he or she gets a percentage of the permits. So we have an increase in revenue, but we can't ever take into account the increase in revenue once we're in the budget. We just have to deal with the expense. Because once the tax rate is set, we don't make any adjustments to revenue. I'm going to set aside DPW and take that up last. So if you flip over, in general health, I'm projecting a surplus of $2,500. In veterans benefits, a deficit of $57,500. This is an area where we have seen increased usage, increased benefits being paid out to veterans. The veterans benefits that a municipality pays are typically for unemployment. There's an unemployment benefit that veterans can receive locally. And then usually the larger amounts are veterans who are receiving some transitional assistance because they're probably in the process of applying for permanent disability benefits. But the town is responsible for transitional benefits for veterans. We do receive reimbursement from the state of 75% of what we pay, but it's in the next year. So you'll see when you look at the fiscal 16 budget that the estimate in state aid for veterans benefits is higher than what we've received in the past because the level of benefits that we're paying out is increased. Now, this really is our second year of increased level of benefits being paid out. I'm sure I've mentioned to you before, when we first started seeing this trend, I did a survey of area communities to see what they were paying, and where we had been paying maybe $10,000 or $15,000, the communities just around us were paying between $50,000 and $100,000 regularly. So we are now paying what other communities had been paying. In the fiscal 16 budget, one of the adjustments that we talked about at the last meeting was to increase veterans' benefits. In library, I'm projecting a deficit of $16,200, and that has to do with the utilities that we just talked about a few minutes ago. In state assessments, a deficit of $93,653. And almost all of this is the increase in choice tuitions that the town will pay, and we've talked about that previously. And then in unclassifieds, I'm projecting a surplus of $15,499, mostly coming from unused unemployment compensation. So then if we go back to DPW, I am projecting an overall deficit of $158,888. There is a $250,000 deficit in snow and ice, and I'm proposing that we make a supplemental appropriation of free cash at the annual town meeting in that same amount to cover the snow and ice deficit. But all of the other deficits will be addressed between either surplus or cuts in budgets. The largest cut that I would propose in DPW right now is almost $52,000 in highway maintenance, which is our pavement management plan. Now, we do have, even if we use $250,000 in free cash, we do have $50,000 remaining. And we had some discussion at the Board of Selectmen's meeting a couple meetings ago about potentially using that additional $50,000 in free cash in the 15 budget so that we didn't have to make a cut to the pavement management plan. I initially agreed with that, but then was kicking myself as I was driving home, and I sent something out to you. And the reason that I was kicking myself is I don't want to propose cuts anywhere. You know, I'd rather that we didn't have to make any cuts. But I also don't want to fund reoccurring expenses with one-time revenue. One of the reasons we had such a big issue in fiscal 16 is because I had proposed, or I had made an assumption when the target budgets were put together, that we would have about $200,000 in free cash to use in fiscal 16 to fund the deposit to the stabilization fund, and then to put the balance against the capital budget. So when we took that out, that's one of the reasons we had such a big hole to begin with in fiscal 16. I did circulate some information to you before, and I'd like to just review that. Again, I did not give you a copy, but in fiscal 15, under the original appropriations for the pavement plan, we have $241,490 in the operating budget. And our initial Chapter 90 allocation from the state for road work was $420,461. So originally in fiscal 15, we had $661,951. In January, we received notice that we would receive an additional amount in Chapter 90, which brought the total up to $630,692. A few weeks ago, we received notice that we would receive $63,069 in pothole money. And so even if we were to reduce our operating budget by that 51,000 that I mentioned to you, we would still have $883,000 available in fiscal 15 for road work. So we would not be doing less road work even with that cut. In fact, we would still be doing more, but not as much as we could have done if we didn't make that cut.
If this is fiscal 15 pavement management, is there any constraint in terms of our ability to do this work in fiscal 15? Or do we have to do the work in fiscal 15, or do we just have to order the work in 15 and pay for it?
We don't have to do any of it, right? Do you want to try? Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not, we receive it in that fiscal year, but we don't necessarily have to spend it all in that fiscal year. Right, the 63,000 in pothole, there was a
Needs to be spent
fiscal
by the end of the
16
fiscal year.
deadline. Yeah.
Yeah. But not the additional Chapter 90 nor the operating budget amounts,
Right.
right?
Well, no, the operating budget has to be either spent or encumbered by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. The snow and ice, we have a projected deficit of $250,000. We have the potential of reimbursement up to $228,609. What happens if we do indeed get that reimbursement? How does that play out? Does that then flow to free cash?
Well, that would be the likely scenario. I mean, if we received it before town meeting, we would use it to fund the budget. If we receive it any time after that, then it's appropriated to free cash. I mean, it falls to free cash.
Right. Or would be eligible to be certified.
Yeah.
But at this point, you only know about $50,000. It's been,
Well, we only know that it's been approved as, or identified as being eligible
right.
for reimbursement.
And that is or is not factored in the 2016 budget?
It's not.
Okay.
So if I read this worksheet correctly, you've been able to balance out everything except for the snow and ice deficit. So any increases in expense have been offset by a decrease.
Yes.
So it's balanced.
Yeah.
Are there any implications for fiscal 16 that we haven't fully accounted for? For example, if we're 105,000 underspent in general government and we're 63,000 overspent in public safety, do either of those represent a trend, or have we accounted for those adjustments as we look to the fiscal 16 budget?
Well, yes and no. The general government, that's not a trend. 50,000 of that is the reserve fund.
Right.
The rest has to do with timing for hiring employees. And the one is legal. So we have been overspending the legal budget for maybe the last 3 or 4 years, and finally we're projecting to spend less. That may be a trend that but the fiscal 16 budget has, I believe it has the same 112,500.
Okay.
In public safety, I mean, there's definitely a trend. We continually go over budget in police lockup, and sometimes in police overtime, regularly in fire overtime. So those are trends. And they have not, without an additional appropriation, they haven't been fully accounted for in fiscal 16. There have been some increases. There's a $9,000 increase to lockup that's in my recommended budget. I don't believe there's any increase, or maybe in the fire department, there is some increase in salaries, in all of the salaries, to account for some of this.
And does the additional coverage impact that line at all? If we were to provide additional coverage at the public safety building?
Would it,
Would it reduce the 28,000 overspend in call volume?
well, I think it definitely has the potential, because that's overtime. Is that 28,000 for the whole budget, or do you want to speak to that?
I can't, the 28,000 actually, probably about 10 of that is overtime, which I've shown in the budget presentations, we're consistently over that amount
Right.
every year, and in that neighborhood. A lot of that is, mostly it's per diem coverage. We had $8,000 in storm coverage for the wonderful winter that we've had, because again, we're not staffed, so a lot of these major storms, I have to put people in the station, because the call people aren't going to be able to get into the station because of the road conditions, the snow, getting their cars cleaned off. So we put anywhere from 2 to a half a dozen guys in the station, depending on how severe the storm is. So there's a lot of that. We had an unusual amount of sick time this year with the bad winter. It was about $6,000 in that. And we had probably another increase of 2,000 or 3,000 just with several multiple alarm incidents this year. So I guess the short of that is usually we always seem to run in about the range of about 17,000, because we're usually about 10 over in the overtime, and the duty officer coverage on the weekend hasn't been fully funded for a while on that. Beyond that, most of that was unusual. Usually, I say we're usually around the 17 range. So in a nutshell, with the increase in the current budget plus the proposal, I would think that would cover most of that and not really affect the additional coverage for us.
Thank you. Any other questions on the fiscal 15 budget adjustments? So as Kerry suggested, we don't need to vote on this tonight. We'll hold this either to our meeting on April 23rd, or if need be, on the morning of May 2nd. Okay, and you wanted to take up the capital?
Yep, so in the warrant itself, on the third page, is the Capital Planning Committee report. And the Capital Planning Committee met on Tuesday this week and made an adjustment to their recommendation. It did not affect the overall budget, but they have made a slight change in recommended projects. So in total, the Capital Planning Committee has recommended projects or equipment in the amount of $1,024,578. The first is the pavement management plan, which is $250,000, and that's accounted for in the operating budget under Department of Public Works. There are two items in the recommended list of purchases that are proposed to be financed for a period of 3 years: a 6-wheel dump truck and sander, and the street sweeper. So the proposal is that we would split the cost over 3 years, and the first year's cost is carried in as a cash outlay in the fiscal 16 budget, a capital planning budget. The committee has also recommended the purchase of one backhoe in the amount of $120,000, 2 marked police vehicles for $96,000, drainage culvert repairs, 2 phases, $43,728, a feasibility study for municipal buildings in the amount of $28,000, some intersection reconfiguration, a plan and implementation $40,850. Technology for the town departments in the amount of $34,000. A speed sign for the police department for $12,000. And technology for the school departments for $30,000. In the original plan, those last two items, the speed sign and school technology, were not included. What was included was painting for Town Hall, for a portion of Town Hall. At the meeting on Tuesday, I asked the committee if they would consider deferring that, because although Town Hall is in need of repair and it's in need of being repainted, we do have the feasibility study for municipal buildings included, and to me it made sense to do the feasibility study and decide what we're going to do before we start spending money on doing something. The committee also is recommending that the $36,524 that was appropriated in fiscal 15 for the carpet at the library be reappropriated by town meeting, and that $15,000 of that go to replacing the burner at the library, and $12,000 go to purchasing an HVAC management system. And then the balance of that go to reduce the, or to be added to the first year debt service payment. So the first year debt service payment on those two vehicles is increased slightly than over what it would have been with the reappropriation. I think it was about $9,000.
So for the items being financed, we have both an initial cash outlay, a down payment, if you will, and then the first year of financing costs. Is that?
Yes.
Is that how that works?
So the sources of funding for this plan, $39,784.64 from prior year unspent articles. About $9,000 of that is the library carpet that they are recommending be reappropriated. The remaining 30 is from the remaining amounts from several prior capital budgets. We always have small amounts of money left over from capital, so once we've closed out the capital budget from the prior year, we ask town meeting to reappropriate whatever is left to fund the next year's capital budget. The cash outlay for the fiscal 16 capital budget is $511,575. $250,000 from the operating budget for the pavement management plan, and borrowing in the amount of $223,218.
Questions, comments on the capital? I know there's been a concern raised with respect to borrowing for capital items. We do have in our policy that if an item is greater than $100,000 and has a useful life of more than 10 years, then we would consider borrowing for it. And I know John has created a working model for us to understand the impact of borrowing and how that plays out going forward. John, are we at risk in any way of compromising our goal of, I think it's 4% of, less than 4% of the omnibus budget, or 3% of the levy, whichever is less?
No, we're not. We're, at least with this borrowing, if we went forward, there's a lot of large requests. The fire trucks, the turf field going out. If we were to borrow all of those at the time that they were requested, we would not only be at risk, we would actually exceed the 4%, which we can't do. So, yeah. So, but right now with this, we're not. The only downstream cost is it will in fact reduce the available funds for capital purchases in the 3 years of the term of this borrowing.
So that may constrain our ability to do a large purchase in the next 3 years.
Yes, yes. But the budget is so far below the cumulative requests that our ability to do that anyway is rather constrained.
Right. And I know the Capital Committee has talked about building a 10-year model. I wouldn't assume that you've had time to do that yet.
We have not. We are, in fact, meeting on May 5th, I believe, to talk about fleshing that out, getting at least running some models, perhaps then, with some projections for two reasons. First of all, to make sure we understand what the effects of borrowing are in the out years, and number two, giving department managers like these three gentlemen here some forward advice about when to expect reasonably that we'd have enough money for the cash for the fire trucks, or for the 6-wheel dump truck, I think, isn't it, or 8-wheel? You've got a large dump truck, 6, in later years.
Other questions or comments on the capital planning report?
I guess one question I would have would be whether or not, if this were to be, if we were to recommend approval of this, if the debt could be structured in such a way that if the snow and ice money comes back, that we would be able to apply that free cash against the debt to basically eliminate the debt.
You certainly could do that. The motion on this warrant article would have to allow for borrowing, would have to give authorization for borrowing. But we could do that. We don't typically borrow until maybe the second half of the year, because a lot of times, things, they might take time to deliver. We need to make sure that we close the year, that the borrowing is done by the close of the year so we don't have a deficit, but we don't necessarily borrow at the beginning of the year. We certainly could wait until after the fall town meeting, because I guess it would depend on when the funds come in. We will have free cash certified by the fall town meeting, but if the money for any reimbursement for the storms doesn't come in by June 30, it won't be part of that free cash certification.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess I was just, because my concern going forward is, aside from its borrowing and the going further out, given the number of requests, the amount of borrowing per year that we'd be looking at. The other concern is whether or not the Capital Planning Committee felt that it was important enough to have these vehicles at this time that they're willing to take $120 to $130 out of the money available in the next 2 years going forward. And I guess I'm assuming that they are, if they're requesting that it be funded through borrowing.
I mean, one thing that I would mention, there are 3 DPW vehicles in here, and they have been in the capital plan. If you go back,
Right.
15, 14, and 13,
Right.
and they just missed the cutoff, so that's why they're all here right now.
Right. No, I don't question at all that it's necessary. I think it's just looking going forward at what the what the requests are, reducing every year the amount of money available, because we do find ourselves in a position of having to borrow each year to fund something. I think is scary to me, and so I think I would feel comfortable making that type of a recommendation, knowing that if the free cash becomes available, there's a potential to apply it as opposed to applying or creating more debt. But that's just my opinion. But I'm sure I've confused John.
A lot of things confuse John. But
For sure.
one of the things that we would be doing then, I believe, is to, since free cash is such a central funding mechanism for capital, we actually then just sort of starve the capital funds going out, I think.
By applying it against the current purchases, or? I guess what I'm also looking at is that $20,000 that we're going to be paying in interest would probably be more useful being applied to capital. I guess I would just as soon put the actual.
I'm not all certain about that, because there are, in fact, some hidden benefits to borrowing. One of which is that we pay, say, I don't know what the inflation rate is for the equipment we borrow, but there is some inflation rate. And if we don't borrow, we end up postponing purchasing this to a later date, which would mean we purchase the same equipment at a slightly higher price. So it's that. Mm-hmm. The other issue that I remember Jack describing the dump truck that we replaced is the sander being, I thought it was sieve-like. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but certainly there is an effect. I don't want to proselytize too much here, but there are effects in terms of service and in terms of cost that flow from borrowing.
I think there's a balance here, and if I'm not mistaken, we spent about $750,000 in capital last year outside of the large purchase that we did. So if you look at the cash outlay plus the borrowing, we're in that range. And I don't know how we could get to $750,000 and get this many capital items. We're basically getting $1 million worth of capital items for $730,000. Realizing that we have to pay that, we're deferring the payment on the rest of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually in favor of this. The question I would have is, are there likely to be any changes in the capital planning report beyond this point?
No, the Capital Planning Committee has concluded its work on the fiscal 16 plan.
So this is the article that will be in the warrant and go to town meeting?
Yes.
Okay. For the purpose of closing out our discussion here and getting to a vote, do I have a motion to recommend approval for the capital planning report in the amount of $1,024,578 to fund the items as detailed in the report?
You know what? We need to back out the $250,000 because it would be appropriated under
in the budget,
operating
right?
budget.
Right.
I don't know why I don't have this. 774,578 would be the appropriation under this article.
And that does include the rescinding of the previous capital purchase of the carpeting? Or is that a separate, does that have to be a separate vote?
Well, I think we would, I don't have that This is why I brought the town accountant with me, to do this.
I thought there was a budget article to do that.
I don't remember rescinding the library's carpet request, because that was just discussed on Tuesday, so it wasn't even,
Right. I could be dreaming.
I just keep looking at all this red ink and it just scares me.
I'm going to have Karen take a look at it so we get you the right number, because I think it's the 774, and then we're going to have to add back the 12,000 and 15,000. But why don't we have her take a look at it so we get the right number?
Okay.
Okay.
Or confirm the right number, and we'll get that to you in a minute. Or
Okay.
if you want to take something else up, we can get that.
Right.
We'll get it to you.
Anything else that's going to impact the budget article?
No.
No. So we can talk about adjustments to the budget, the 129,000. I hate to call it surplus, but
Then, my take on it is that the requests that we're hearing are $48,000 to fire to fund the Friday, Saturday coverage. $40,000 for the police department?
26,000?
It was 26 and, or 45, I think that's the, so I was
45,
just
right.
trying to
Yep.
make sure I had those numbers right. Okay, so that's, and then 14,000 for the library?
$14,250.60.
Vehicle maintenance.
Yeah, no, I'm not there yet, I'm still adding. That number seemed more fluid than all the rest of them. Because basically what happens is if all of those things are approved, then I'm reading 93,000 for public safety staffing, 14,250 for the library, bringing us up to 107, leaving 16,000 to continue to appropriate either towards vehicle maintenance or some other line.
What did you include for vehicle maintenance?
I didn't. That's why there's the 16,000, since they said that could be anywhere from, you know.
So what did you include?
If I include 16,000.
6478 for stabilization,
Right, 6478 for stabilization.
14,250 and 60 cents for library,
I didn't do the 60 cents, I'm sorry.
48,000 for fire,
48,000 for fire,
and then you had what, 45,000 for police?
well, I'm putting the 45,000 for police in there right now as a, just to see where we are when we get to the total. And then that, 93, 107, 250, 60.
$208, 457 and 20.
Where do you get 208, 457?
The stabilization, the library, the fire, and the police.
Stabilization, the library, the fire, and the police should just come to 100 something?
Sorry. Must have had an extra zero in there somewhere.
7, 'cause I'm at
113, 728, 60. Is that what you got? Is that what you got there?
I got 113, 728 without putting anything in for vehicle maintenance. So putting in for vehicle maintenance, the remaining, looks like 9,000? I know Karen's over there adding and subtracting too, so.
So, you're wondering if the remaining is 9,000?
Of the, if we do, okay, if the stabilization fund gets 6,478, it's really too bad we have the accountant working on a whole nother problem.
Oh, no,
over
she's
there.
done. We have that. You want to go?
Could she work on our problem now? All right, and then 93,000, okay, 99,478,
The 48 and the 45,000
14,
together is 93,000?
1425.
Yeah, 48,000 for the fire and 45,000 for police.
12, 7, 10. Okay, so 114,
There,
128.
there is another item that we haven't talked about this evening, but did come up at our last meeting, and that is the snow and ice account.
Yes.
We're at $250,000. We've been at $250,000 for the last several years. Actually, I think we increased it to $260. But we've consistently spent more than $300. And I think that goes back at least 5 years running. I'm inclined to increase the snow and ice by some amount. So I think if there's a way to do that, we should consider it. So, comments, questions, arguments?
I'm still doing math. I'm sorry. I could go, I could be comfortable either way. Are you talking about reducing the amount for the police coverage to the 26,000 original request and then putting the additional funds into the snow and ice budget?
Yes.
Okay.
With some money going to vehicle maintenance. Not the full amount of 18,000, but at least half of it. If we put half of it, 9,000. That would leave us about 25,000, a little more than 25,000 to add to the snow and ice account.
And that would get us at 285, which gives us a lot of headroom for deficit spending, because it's only been 1 or 2 years, I think, Jack, in the last, what, dozen or so, where we have been below 300? Unfair question, I'm sorry.
I have to see the graph.
Yeah.
Let me get the graph.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
It's not in my presentation, I don't think.
I think I stuck it in the, I stuck it in a pile of stuff. Could be wrong, I could be in the wrong.
Which graph?
It's
not
It's
in there?
actually in the town manager's budget presentation.
Oh, okay.
Graph in this year's DPW presentation was for the amount of money per year for pavement.
Unorganized mess.
You might have it
It's
in
in
last
there
year's.
somewhere, so.
It's on page 18, I believe. Yeah, it's on page 18 of the town manager's presentation.
Must be a different presentation, because I have it on page 14,
Oops.
but I have this one.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It dipped below 200 in fiscal '06 and fiscal '07. But after that, it's been consistently over 300. $285 certainly sounds more realistic.
Right. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Do we have to do it all as one motion?
Yes, it's one budget article.
Okay.
$129,578. So I'm prepared to ask for a motion.
What are the numbers?
$6,478 into the stabilization fund, $14,250.60 into the library, $48,000 into fire for ambulance coverage, $26,000 for police for desk coverage, $9,849.40 for vehicle maintenance, and $25,000 for snow and ice, for a total of $129,578.
What did you have going into vehicle maintenance again? 9,000.
$9,849.40. I took whatever money was left over.
Yep.
So I will make a motion. Do you want me to go through it all again?
You could just say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion.
I don't know, there's a piece of me that really wants to go after the overtime for the lockup.
The overtime for the lockup.
That if the weekend coverage of the desk would allow for a reduction in the, given that we're $20,000 over this year, I think that I'd like to, even if it's just, like splitting the baby between that and the snow and ice deficit, which I also know that we have to address. But.
So you're suggesting the 45,000 rather than the 26,000?
Or some number between them. So say if you wanted to put 25,000 into the snow and ice deficit, that we do 15 and 10, and I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
15, you have to be more specific. I don't know what you're suggesting.
That instead of 25,000 going to the snow and ice deficit, that 15,000 go towards police and 10,000 go towards snow and ice.
To address a line item that we have no recommendation in front of us.
Well, no, to address the partial coverage for the weekend for the police.
So the 45,000. Some portion
If I have to
of-
go to the 45,000, then it would be, okay, so 26, so I'm saying 36,000.
I don't know what impact that would have.
Yeah, I don't know if
You'd
it would or
have to ask
not.
Chief Marino to comment on that.
Let me tell you this. In 3 months here, we've
Microphone.
last 3 months, we've arrested 50 more people than we did in the 3 months of last year, the same time period, from January to March. It's never going to go down. We're going to use up more lockup money as we go forward. So we thought we'd put this person on the weekend. That would help defer some of the lockup costs. Because you're not paying that person as much as you would to call somebody in on overtime, particularly at sergeant or lieutenant's pay, to watch a prisoner. So that was that's why. Realistically, to cover the weekend, it cost $118,000. So that's like $58,000, not $55,000, not 45. What I thought was, if we did that, I'd be able to take that out of $10,000 out of my lockup budget, because I would be saving money from the lockup budget. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. To cover that extra $10,000. So, if you want to cover it for Monday through Friday, it's going to be $26,000. If you want to do it for the weekend as well, for the 7 days a week, it's got to be it's $45,000. I can't.
Okay, so it makes no sense to split it.
These people come in on Friday nights, the ones we're concerned with, and this happens typically. There's no court Saturday morning, so we can't bring them to court till Monday morning, typically, unless they can make bail, and oftentimes they can't, so they're there all weekend. So that's why we're trying to cover the weekends. That's a huge problem for us, is trying to cover prisoner watch for the weekend. When in fact we could put somebody on the desk at a cheaper price, and they're multitasking. They're giving the community a service, plus they're saving us money on prisoner watch. That was the idea and the intent of that. So I'm not sure what half of that would do for me, to be
Okay,
quite
probably
honest with
nothing,
you.
okay,
Probably nothing.
okay.
What if, do you have a deficit in the lockup account? What if we took $10,000 and put it toward the lockup account?
Presently, we're, as of 2 weeks ago, we're $4,500 behind
Right.
in the in the red
Right.
on the lockup account. By now, it's about probably double, because we just did a payroll, and there was another $3,600 in lockup fees. I believe.
Right, so I'm kind of suggesting a bit of a middle ground here. The $26,000 for the Monday through Friday, 7 to 7, plus increasing the lockup coverage by
Another
$10,000.
That would help, definitely.
That would allow us to put $15,000 into the snow and ice account. So it's a bit of a compromise.
Right. That
But
would
I think
help.
it gets to the intent that you were looking for, Terry.
Yeah, that would definitely help cover that lockup. Thank
Does
you.
it make sense, though? I guess from my standpoint, if we're paying overtime, it's almost like we're going to have to pay for all this regardless. If we have to pay overtime for lockup, it's going to come from somewhere anyway. If we have to pay overtime not overtime, if we have to pay the overage on snow and ice, I guess I'm just wondering if it makes sense to move $10,000 or put $10,000 in the lockup at the price of having to pay overtime. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the trade-off is increases in staff. And every time we increase staff, we increase the long-term commitment, the pension, the health care, all the costs associated with an extra FTE. So, you know, there's a trade-off there between paying overtime and bringing another FTE on staff and having a commitment to a higher headcount.
Makes sense.
So we are projecting an overage in the current year in lockup of about $20,000. In the first round of the 16 budget, it was increased by 9,000. So if you increased it by another 10, that's 19. That's almost what we're projecting our expenses will be for the current year.
Okay? So if we want to amend the motion, we need to withdraw the motion that's on the floor? John, you seconded the motion. Are you willing to
I
withdraw it
certainly
in
am.
favor of an amended motion?
Yes, I am.
Karen?
Yes.
So the amended motion would move $15,000 into the snow and ice account and $10,000 into the lockup. The other amounts don't change, and the total amount doesn't change.
Okay.
I will move on that.
Okay? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Further discussion.
Yeah, what are the new numbers again?
$6,478 to stabilization, $14,250.60 to library, $48,000 to fire, $26,000 to police, $9,849.40 to vehicle maintenance, $15,000 to snow and ice, $10,000 to police lockup,
Okay.
for a total of $129,578.
Okay.
Terry, you good with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we prepared to vote?
Yeah.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 5-0.
So then if I could also ask you to vote the total budget for fiscal 16 in the amount of $32,020. 32,000.
We're loaded now.
Wow.
No, because they did that penny thing.
Yeah. $32,025,894.
Repeat one more time, please.
$32,025,894.
Thank you.
So then I would make a motion to recommend approval of the FY16 budget in the amount of $32,025,894.
Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 5-0.
So then if you want to take up the stabilization article, that total is $98,232.
And that includes the,
The additional $6,479. Stabilization is Article 15.
Thank you.
Yep.
and I'm sorry, Carrie, what was that amount?
$98,232.
Okay. Then I would make a motion to recommend approval of Article 15, transferring $98,232 to the stabilization fund. Do I have to say from where? No.
Second.
Any discussion?
And that gets us to 5%, yes.
Yes.
Right. Those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No, none.
And then the capital plan, which is Article 14, the amount which needs to be appropriated. Hold on.
We thought we had it.
What was the stabilization number? 98? 832?
98.
98 to
32.
32.
232.
We'll do this math problem together. So you need to appropriate $1,024,578 less 250 plus 12,000 plus 15,000. Oh, okay, I was right. 801,578.
801,578.
And her math is correct.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a motion to recommend approval for the FY16 capital plan in the amount of $801,578?
I think I'll make a motion to, if we approve the language of the article, which is to vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds or borrow a sum of money. So if we make the motion to reflect the article.
Okay, what article are you looking at?
14.
Am I looking at the
Article
wrong one?
14. This Article 14.
Oh, right, or borrow a sum of money.
Right. So I just wanted to basically just make the motion to approve Article 14 to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds or borrow a sum of money to fund the FY16 capital plan in the amount of $801,578. In no sense? No sense.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? 5-0. Okay. So we voted on 14, we voted on 15, we voted on 16. Sewer enterprise?
This one, you didn't have the dollar amount last week.
Right.
$848,349.
Which article is that?
Article 17. I know it says in your handout that you voted to approve, but you didn't.
And we voted to approve 6 to nothing, and we haven't had 6. All right, so the figure in here is 848,349, that's correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, make a motion to approve Article 17 to raise and appropriate.
Recommend approval?
Recommend approval of Article 17 in the amount of $848,349.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? None. 5-0.
6-0, yeah.
So we voted on 16, Terry. That was the budget.
Oh, we did
article.
vote that last time.
Just tonight.
A couple of motions ago.
That was the budget article?
Oh, yes, okay. Why did I say 16?
You asked about 16.
I don't remember.
So I think we're at 43, Article 43.
Will the articles be reordered?
They likely will be reordered so that all the financial articles are together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had asked the last time about the two scenic roads and the road acceptance. You asked for some additional information, and I did ask the land use director for that. I don't have it yet. I told him Tuesday. I forgot it was you who had asked. So I asked him for it for Tuesday, not for this Thursday.
Okay, and just to,
43.
Articles 35
Are we on
and 36.
42, right?
Well, 42, I think we talked about the last time, that we're still, we have town council reviewing that and still gathering some information.
So we'll hold on that.
I'm still mostly just confused on the capital planning report. That was probably where I was going back to. The additional recommendation was that the other piece had to be rescinded before we could approve?
Yes,
So actually, there'll be an article in front of this article that would rescind that before we can approve that?
it'll be part of the same, the motion will encompass.
The whole thing?
Whole
Okay, so
thing.
there isn't a separate, okay, thank you.
I think I was thinking of these articles when I heard the word rescind, right? Because these articles rescind the remaining borrowing.
Oh, okay.
You know what, there was,
Yeah, and that one we did do.
so are we ready for 43?
Yes.
Well, I beg your pardon, but just clarification here. Did we vote on Article 26, using the bond premiums to reduce future borrowing?
That's the one I was just looking for. You asked me to give you that dollar amount,
Yeah.
and I have that. I'll just see where I wrote it down. I'm going to look for that dollar amount because I do have it. But the Articles 43 through 46, these are all previously authorized borrowing articles where the project has been completed and was completed and the amount borrowed was less than what was authorized. So the only way to get that authorized but unexpended off of our books is to have town meeting vote to rescind the remaining authorization. So 43 is to rescind $284,263.59 from Article 2 of the November 6, 2001 special town meeting for engineering and construction of sewers.
Do I have a motion to recommend approval for Article 43 in the amount of $284,000, 263.59?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? None. 5-0.
Where does the money go back to?
26?
There's no money.
There's no money,
26.
We ended up not having to borrow it, so it's just on the,
just on paper.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You're all
Article
set for
44?
44. is to rescind the amount of $28,708 from Article 4 of the May 7, 2005 special town meeting for engineering and construction of sewers.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of rescinding the sum of $28,708 from Article 4 of the 5/7/2005 special town meeting.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? None.
Article 45 is to rescind the sum of $125,000 from Article 5 of the October 1st, 2002 special town meeting for the renovation of Turkey Hill Middle School heating system.
So I'll make a motion to approve the rescinding the sum of $125,000, which is the remaining borrowing authorization from Article 5 of the October 1st, 2002 special town meeting.
Recommend approval?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? None.
Article 46 is a request to rescind the sum of $56,550 from Article 4 of the May 3rd, 2003 special town meeting for the construction and/or renovation of the heating system at Thomas Passios Elementary School.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 46, rescinding the sum of $56,550 authorization from Article 4 of the 5/3/2003 special town meeting.
Second.
Discussion?
None?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None.
So then back to Article 26. We talked about this last week. This is a request to rescind a portion of the authorization for the middle school, high school construction project to reflect the amount that the town has received in premiums, which is $105,975.36.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
$105,975.36.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 26 to appropriate the premium paid to the town in the amount of $105,975.36.
Second.
Discussion?
Do I have to finish saying to pay costs? No, I don't, because we recommended approval of the article.
Yeah, we're on Article 26.
Okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? None. In my notes, Carrie, the remaining articles are either no impact or things that we would vote on at town meeting,
Yes.
right? Okay, so that wraps up the budget and the warrant articles. Carrie, do you have anything else for us?
No, I don't.
Thank you. So, we've had a fair amount of information in flux with the budget, so I'm behind more than a little bit in terms of my draft, but I do want to at least share with you what I have so far. What I did was I included last year's letter, and I started to update some of the numbers from last year to this year. Didn't quite get through it. and I outlined what the key message would be for this year. Now that we've got the numbers, I can put this together and get something to you on Sunday. And if you would reply to me individually, so that we're not deliberating, with any comments or feedback that you might have.
Okay.
But it's basically summarizing the recommendations that we're making.
And that needs to be to carry by Monday? Is that, when is that?
I think Tuesday, based on the Board of Selectmen meeting Tuesday night, if we get it to Elaine on Tuesday, we should be good, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, it is fairly rough at this point. And obviously, we took some actions tonight that need to be reflected in here. Okay. Minutes.
I got a stab at the minutes, but I have one change I'd like to make before I formally put them in. So let me circulate them the next time.
Okay. Do we have any committee or department updates?
No?
Building Reuse Committee hasn't met for a while. We're meeting on Monday. Just to let you know. So we're scheduled to meet on April 9th. That would be our regularly scheduled meeting. Plugging in a special meeting this evening, I think the intent was that we would meet this evening instead of next week. That still leaves us with April 23rd for our next regular meeting, for us to talk about anything else that might come up at annual town meeting.
Just one thing on the April 23rd meeting, I will be out of town, family gathering. I can come if it's necessary to get a quorum on that. I'd rather not, but I can come.
Okay.
So don't count on me unless you need me.
All right, I'll verify we have a quorum in advance. Okay? And then we have the annual town meeting on May 2nd. I've listed it as 9 a.m. That's the start of town meeting. Typically, we do meet beforehand for any open business that we might have. We might have a recommendation or two that we want to vote on Saturday morning. Anything else for tonight? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You have 9:05. Thank you all. Good night.